You are listening to Proof Text, a Glossa House podcast exploring Scripture and all things related to it. New episodes are released daily. For more information, check out glossahouse.com and subscribe to our channels on Spotify and YouTube. Welcome and enjoy.
Hello and welcome to Proof Text. I am Michael Halcomb and this is a Fallacy of the Week episode. So we're looking at something fallacious and we're going to poke some holes in it. We're going to find some logical fallacies in it and talk about why it's ridiculous. So if this is your first time catching an episode of Fallacy of the Week, maybe go back and watch some other ones after this. You'll find some good stuff. But what we do on here is I usually show a sort of meme or something that's sort of floating around Facebook, some kind of post, and we poke holes in it, show the logical fallacies in it. All right, what I have for you today is pretty interesting. It's based on this upcoming eclipse that's about to happen. So that's going to take place in April 8th, supposedly, of 2024. And yeah, I'm just going to go ahead and put this up on the screen. If you're watching, you're going to be able to see it. If you're listening, that's fine. I'll read some of this to you. So here we go. This is just silly. Someone named Sarah Jane posted this. And it says, she posted this. To say that there's much buzz online concerning the upcoming April 8th solar eclipse would be a vast understatement. Just exactly why is this particular eclipse causing such a fuss? Check out the amazing article from Michael Snyder. And Michael Snyder's article is very long. I'm not going to read the whole thing here. He talks about here's the idea. He says, last Friday I told my core supporters about an amazing discovery. Oh, isn't that narcissistic? He discovered something. An amazing discovery regarding how the sun, the moon, and 7 other planets in our solar system will be aligned during the Great American Eclipse on April 8th. In this article, I'm going to focus on 7 specific locations that are named Nineveh. By the way, he spells Nineveh wrong there with an AH at the end, as he does all the way through the article. So, yeah, that should tell you something. Which just happened to fall within the path of the Great American Eclipse on April 8th. He says, let me start by going back almost 7 years. On August 21st, 2017, the first Great American Eclipse made headlines all over the nation. It was known as the 7 Salem Eclipse because the path of that eclipse crossed over the 7 U.S. locations named Salem. Salem, Oregon, Idaho, Wyoming, Nebraska, Missouri, Kentucky, South Carolina. Salem short for Jerusalem. That's why there's so many Americans. That's why so many Americans chose that name for their communities. Now, the second Great American Eclipse is almost here. The path that it'll cross over 7 locations named Nineveh, misspelled again. And then he lists Nineveh, Texas. These are spelled right, however. Nineveh, Texas, Missouri, Indiana, Ohio, Pennsylvania, Virginia, New York. The eclipse will also cross over a location named Nineveh, misspelled again, in the province of Nova Scotia, Canada. So there may even be 8, but they like the number 7, so they want to leave that out. Yeah, and he says, so what do we know about Nineveh? Well, in chapter 10, Nineveh tells us it was built by Nimrod. And Wikipedia. Oh, there we go, citing great sources. I mean, Wikipedia is good sometimes, but you know, when your first cited source is Wikipedia and you're trying to make biblical claims, Wikipedia tells us that the path of the Bursagale eclipse crossed over Nineveh, spelled wrong again, biblical Nineveh, spelled wrong, on June 15th, 763 BC. Okay. And then he goes on to say, some believe that eclipse happened at the same time Jonah was in Nineveh, warning the city that it would be destroyed. Yeah, so he goes on to try to make some dating claims here that are just ridiculous. And he says, now a historic solar eclipse of our own is here. But instead of crossing over just one Nineveh, misspelled again, our solar eclipse will be crossing over 7 Ninevehs. I thought he said 8. But it's misspelled again. And he's saying it's being reported that it'll be the most viewed astronomical event in all of U.S. history, which I think is just silly. Okay, and he says he's talking about how in Texas the National Guard's going to be active, and it's sort of become the ground zero in a political fight about lawmakers and the migrant border crisis. And he talks about Joe Biden and how that's his fault. And he says, it's just another coincidence, eh? Question mark. Um, I don't see the coincidence even. He says one more thing about April that I wanted to mention. He says also the 13-year cicadas and the 17-year cicadas are going to start emerging simultaneously for the first time since Thomas Jefferson was president. Two different broods of cicadas. And says billions of winged insects will make an appearance across the Midwest and Southeast, beginning in some places in late April, for a raucous mating ritual that tends to inspire fascination and annoyance. This year's dual emergence is a once-in-a-lifetime event. What's more, these are known as Brood 13 and Brood 19 cicadas, and their homes are adjacent to one another with a narrow overlap in Illinois. A narrow overlap in central Illinois, he says? This is odd because the path of the Great American Eclipse of 2017 and the path of the Great American Eclipse of 2024 just so happen to intersect in Illinois. A giant X over America is being formed by the paths of those two eclipses. The previous eclipse, the first, what he calls, and then the second eclipse that's about to happen, and then where the cicadas met. He says, there's so much more about these two eclipses in my most recent book entitled Chaos. Now we see why he's doing it. He wants to sell his crazy book. But, as I stated there, I'm not anticipating that any particular event will happen on April 8th. What? This is just ridiculous. Just like the city of Nineveh, misspelled again in the ancient world, we're being given opportunity to change direction. Will we take advantage of that opportunity or ignore it? This is about the most ignorant thing I've seen on social media, and I've seen a lot of ignorant stuff. You've been watching these fallacy of the week videos, you know that. So he's quoting Luke 17 and Matthew 12 and Jonah 3 here. And he's also making the point that, all this takes place under the constellation Cetus, which is the whale. And also included in the path of the eclipse is the Ark in Williamstown, Kentucky, right next door to my hometown. And then 40 days after this will be May 18th, the eve of Pentecost. And so this is just absolutely, this is mind-boggling. So, first of all, several fallacies. I'm going to give you a handful of fallacies. What we see most readily is the historical anachronism fallacy, where you're taking modern events and sort of reading them back on earlier events. You're also taking earlier events and reading them into modern events. It's problematic. That's not how history works. The second we have here is a post hoc fallacy. The idea is, right, correlation doesn't imply causation. Correlation and causation are two different things. And what this article attempts to do is draw significance from the alignment of various celestial events with specific locations and historical occurrences. And here's where we say, hey, just because events coincide in time or align spatially does not mean they're causally connected or causally significant. Further, you have to make those lines on the map here wide enough that they capture all those places. So it's not a straight line. If you look at the road, it's actually not a straight line, but you have to make those lines wide enough on the point he's trying to make to enclose all those 7 Ninevehs in the ark and whatever else. It's just ridiculous. So this post hoc fallacy, correlation doesn't imply causation. That's what you need to remember it as. So post hoc literally mean before this. The post hoc fallacy before this. So we also have cherry picking going on here. A very, very common fallacy in these memes and posts on the internet, where the author Cherry picking is where an author selects specific data points, like locations such as Salem or Nineveh or the Williamstown Ark, or the cicada emergence, right? He picks these specific data points that fits his narrative and creates and concocts a narrative, but ignores the contradictory evidence or alternative interpretations, right? Well, Boston, Massachusetts is in that line that he drew too. So what about that? Cincinnati, Ohio is in there too. So what about Boston and Cincinnati and all the other town and city names? Well, you're just ignoring those, right? What about those? This is cherry picking selective evidence to make the claim while ignoring other evidence. What we also have here is an appeal to probability, which is fallacious. The article is emphasizing the rarity of such events. It hasn't happened in this many years since this person was president. Since this is once in a lifetime. And emphasizing the rarity of events, like the cicadas, for example, to suggest their significance, right? To try to imbue them with some special significance. But here's the thing, rarity alone doesn't necessarily imply importance or meaning. It just doesn't. We also have an appeal to authority going on here that I think is problematic because with the author, right, he's referencing Bible scholars. I didn't even know the name of that Bible scholar, and I'm a Bible scholar, so I doubt that person was actually a Bible scholar. But he's citing also the Bible just in a piecemeal fashion. He's citing Jefferson, like other historical events, and this makes him sound like he knows what he's talking about, right? Makes him sound like he knows what he's talking about. It seems to add credibility to his claims, but his claims are all over the place. They're silly, absolutely ridiculous. And he doesn't provide any empirical evidence, any logical reasoning to support his arguments, right? It's all just all over the place, and it doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense because of all the fallacies we've already noted. They poke holes in it. They break the logic. They don't even break the logic because there isn't logic. They expose the faulty logic. We also have a bandwagon fallacy going on here. And if you read through the comments, man, you really see that. Because the article is implying that the widespread attention is going to be the most watched in history, right? Implying that this widespread attention given to this event somehow validates its significance. So what? Just because a lot of people are watching something or see something doesn't validate its significance. Popularity and attention don't determine truth. Period. That's just a fact. Just a couple more here. We have a confirmation bias going on very, very much. And I think it's a confirmation bias in the attempt to sell a book. Yeah. So what's going on? We already talked about cherry picking, right? The author is selectively picking things, but he's also selectively interpreting things. And that's the confirmation bias. So he picks these events selectively and then selectively interprets them according to his bias to confirm what he believes. These things will support his predetermined conclusion without considering the other alternatives or explanations or evidence. And finally, there's a false analogy fallacy going on, I think, drawing parallels between contemporary events, the Great American Eclipse, for example, and historical events like the Versicale eclipse and the story of Jonah, without considering at all the vast differences in cultural, societal, social, scientific contexts, right? Even theological contexts. And so, overall, really, this stupid post employs a combination. It has a combination of logical fallacies and a lot of speculative reasoning going on in an attempt to try to suggest a connection between celestial events and contemporary societal issues without providing any evidence for that. So it's just silly. If you see this stuff, don't share it, don't like it, don't do anything with it, except now that you know this stuff, ignore it, move on. It's ridiculous. Know better. Yeah? All right, friends, I'm going to stop there and say I hope that helps.
Interested in growing your ancient language skills but not sure where to start? Glossa House can help. From illustrated readers and short stories to lexicons and grammars, Glossa House offers a variety of resources for beginning, intermediate, and experienced ancient language learners. Head to glossahouse.com today. Glossa House, language resources for the global community.